So we just talked about obsessive thoughts. When you have a lot of these obsessive thoughts, whether it be with your own health, your own self-improvement, you could be trying to form distractions by doing various jobs or activities and you're not really focusing on the actual problems. You could be obsessed over another person, whether they like you or not, whether it be like a friend or a romantic partner. I've certainly had plenty of experiences like that, which I've discussed. One of them that I did forget is back in the day, I used to be someone who, my mindset when I would talk to other people is like I would send a message and then I would immediately regret it. I would be so afraid and fearful. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, did I say something wrong? Are they not going to talk to me anymore? And I sometimes have still felt that way. And then I have since then learned to just back off of that thought. Because those are obsessive thoughts that go through my mind. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I deal with these obsessive thoughts and perhaps a lot of ways that can really help you, because these obsessive thoughts can be very debilitating because they put you into a state of fear and panic and basically a type of paralysis. You're not able to make a decision. You are frozen when you have a lot of these fears. You're frozen when you begin to obsess over things because you're beginning to think all these thoughts going through your mind. So you end up taking an action that often is very negative and it's not a positive action. So I'm going to share a little bit about my own ways of how I stop these obsessive thoughts as well, and perhaps some ways that will really help you. So we did talk about distractions when it comes to obsessive nature. And I did say that this is double-sided. It can be both positive and negative. What does that mean exactly? Well, if you're distracting from the bigger problem that you have because you don't want to face it, that is something that is very negative because you're not actually dealing with the problem. I use distractions as a positive means of dealing with a lot of these obsessive thoughts that I have, because I realize when I start to feel bored, when I start to let my mind go places that it really shouldn't be going down, like a rabbit hole of thoughts and ideas, I need to stop it. And usually a very good way for me is to have some sort of distraction. And by distraction, that could mean start working on something, start shifting my focus to something else that could be perhaps a bit more positive in nature, something that is going to allow me to shift my focus in a more positive direction than constantly going down this rabbit hole that leads nowhere. It leads nowhere because ultimately what it's going to do is it's going to lead to all these obsessive thoughts that go down a path that make me think things that are not real whatsoever. So distractions are a very good method, but how do you know if it's a positive distraction or something negative? Well, I think this is just mostly a feeling. Personally, this is a feeling that I often have. It's like I start to realize where my negative thinking starts to come into play. And it's not that I'm trying to deny something or push something out. It's more so that this mindset that I have is starting to lead to negative thought patterns. So I have to have a distraction. And that distraction can be an activity. It can be work. It can be any number of things to really take my mind off something. And it's interesting because when I'm working on that, it can often uplift my mood so much that when I'm done with the activity, if my mind were to think about the thing that I was obsessing over, then it doesn't really happen anymore. I don't feel negative. I don't feel bad. But sometimes if I'm distracted with something else, I'm working on something else, I have this positive coping thing, and then I'm done with that project, immediately my mind goes back to what I was obsessing over, and then it's like dread again. Dread, negative feelings, negative mindset going, all of this stuff going through my mind. So then I have to sort it out and go through some other methods of dealing with some of these obsessive thoughts. One of the most useful things is mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of being in the present moment. When you're obsessing over things, that is your mind perhaps creating what-if scenarios that are giving you anxiety, or you're obsessing over past situations. These past situations can lead to depression. Depression, anxiety, whatever other negative feelings that you have, mindfulness can bring you back to the present moment. But here's the problem. If you've never practiced mindfulness before, guess what? It's going to be very tough for you. It is even still tough for me at times where I have these obsessive thoughts and it's like I'm doing my best to calm my mind, relax my mind, but it's just, they just keep coming. They just keep coming. And sometimes I will be trying to quiet my mind. I will do a meditation. I will relax, and I'll think that I'm in a more relaxed space, and then all of a sudden they just kind of come back, and I completely lose my train of thought, and it's like my thoughts are going through my mind again, and then it's like I'm lost in my thought again, and I didn't even realize that I had changed back into that mode. So sometimes it can be very hard. It really can be. But you just have to go with the flow of it. Okay? So that's something that I've realized. It's like if doing a meditation is a bit too hard for you at that moment, just allow the thoughts to flow. Have the thoughts go through your mind and just envision yourself taking a step back and just observing them. They say this, they say that, they have all these expectations, they are thinking negative things about certain situations going on in your life or certain people, or you just hear conversations going on, all this sort of stuff. Just take a step back and just try to avoid yourself from stepping into that and actually it consuming you. Because the moment you step into it and have it consume you, you feel the emotions of it. You feel the emotions of it as it begins to bring you down and weigh you down. And then you start going down this negative thought pattern, and then everything just goes out of control. You don't want that. You want to take a step back and just pause for a moment. And just let your mind go. Let those thoughts flow through your mind as they want to do. But don't have an emotional attachment to it. Something else when it comes to these meditations or mindfulness that I do is what I notice is when you're focusing on the breath, when you're focusing on breathing, when you're breathing in and you're breathing out. When you're actively breathing in, I find mine is very focused. I can focus on the breath coming in. When I breathe out, I can focus. I envision and I imagine the breath coming out. The problem is it's in between those breaths that cause a distraction. You breathe in, that pause, that brief pause, whether it be for a second or a half a second even, thoughts come in. Thoughts come in and distract you, take your mind off things, and then very, very quickly, you start going down a different path, and then your mind is distracted again. So, what you can do is shorten that breath even more, where you're just immediately breathing out the moment that you breathe in, or you could pay attention to those little pauses. You can do a visual representation of a conveyor belt. If you think about a conveyor belt, breathe in, and then it goes around the side. Pay attention to that little part where it goes around the side. And then you breathe out. And then it goes around the side again. If instead you're focusing on the item that is on the conveyor belt, it goes to the end and then the item falls off as you're distracted. You're not focusing on the conveyor belt itself, the breath. You're focusing on the action on top of that. You don't want to do that. You want to focus on the whole thing. Entirely. So that's just something that I have found very, very helpful even. In addition, you have to realize that we cannot control things outside of us. We can only control our own life, which is a reflection. I mean, things on the outside of us are often a reflection of us internally. So while we can't directly change events outside of us, in a sense, we kind of can by changing ourselves, changing our perspective, changing our attitude and our mindset. Then the outside world begins to change. So, if you're expecting someone to do something or to behave a certain way and you're obsessing over it, the thought that comes to my mind is, if you're upset, like how I used to be, if I'm obsessing over someone's reaction to a message that I send them, and this is still, as I said, this is still sometimes a problem a little bit, but I take a step back. I'm like, I'm going to detach from the outcome of this because I don't have control over it. If I send a message to someone, which, I'm every single day, I'm talking to random people I've never met before. I don't know anything about. I'm just meeting new little people every single day, all the time, always, okay? If I'm sending a message to someone and I'm interacting with them, I'm talking with them, I send a message. What are my emotions with this? Am I emotionally invested in a way that I am like, oh gosh, did I say something wrong? Is that why they have not replied back? It's been several days, and it's like, am I obsessing over certain things? Certainly I can have those thoughts, but then I realize, wait a second, I have no control over the reaction of the other person. I have no control over what this person is doing in their life. I have no idea even what they're doing. They could be doing something that is very, very busy for them. Maybe something very negative or bad happened to them. Maybe they're just busy with work or something. I have no idea or control over that. So this is out of my hands at that point. I send the message and I send it, and I have to take a step back and go, it doesn't matter what the outcome is. It doesn't matter what the outcome is at all. The person can reply back at, whatever speed that they choose to, or not at all. That's entirely up to them. But I have to detach from that outcome and not expect anything. Because the moment I try to expect something, this is something that's also a very, very new discovery for me that I have learned through some incidents that have happened recently, where I had high expectations on people. High expectations to the point where I was expecting things from other people to react a certain way, to respond a certain way, to be a certain way, or I would be filled with so much despair and like disappointment, things along those lines. It wasn't like I was projecting that to them, basically saying, oh, you better be this way or else. No, I wasn't negative about it. It was more so internally. Internally, I was building up an image of the person within my mind, how they should be. And when they were not that person, I would feel disappointment. That's something within my own mind that I am creating. I am creating that. The other person is just who they are. They're not anything other than who they are. I'm building up this fabricated idea of who I think that they are within my mind, and it's not accurate. It's not true. It's not real. But I have those thoughts going through my mind. So that's just something to be aware of. These are things that you can do to stop these obsessive thoughts, and they are something that very, very much helped me deal with a lot of these problems. So I really hope that it was helpful for you to really understand how you can deal with these problems as well, because it can be very debilitating and change your perspective, a lot of these obsessive thoughts. So change your mind, change your perspective, be calmer about it, and then you can overcome it.